Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today we're focusing on something that, well, it profoundly shapes our everyday lives, often without us even realizing it.
That's right.
Human factors in information technology and human-computer interaction, or HCI.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission today isn't just about defining terms. We want to peel back the layers, understand the surprising history, and maybe gaze into the future of how we humans truly connect with technology.
All the tech that's all around us.
Exactly. Think of it as a shortcut to understanding why some tech just clicks and some makes you want to throw it across the room.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. So to kick things off, what exactly is a human factor? When we talk about it with technology, we're
Yeah.
basically talking about any physical or cognitive property
Yeah.
you can tip to a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even like a social behavior. That directly impacts how they use a system.
Precisely.
It's really about putting the human, well, right at the center of the tech equation.
That's spot on.
Mhm.
And the study of human factors, it actually branches out into a few key areas.
Mm.
There's human factors science, which is the deep scientific understanding of our human abilities, what we're good at, where we struggle.
Right.
Then there's human factors engineering. That's the practical application of that understanding to design, develop, and, well, deploy systems and services.
Applying the science.
Exactly. And finally, it's about making sure that this engineering is actually successful in real-world projects. Because, understanding something in theory is one thing,
Yeah.
but making it work for real people, that's another challenge entirely.
So the ultimate goal here is to make technology genuinely better for us, the end users.
Mm-hmm.
We're aiming for improved performance, maybe better safety, perhaps reduced costs, or simply making tech so intuitive that everyone wants to adopt it.
That adoption piece is key.
It's all about enriching that end user experience. And sometimes you might hear the term ergonomics used,
Oh, yeah, often.
especially for the physical side of things. And that's broadly correct, isn't it? It's about designing things for human comfort and efficiency.
Absolutely. Physical fit and function.
Now, human factors is a pretty broad umbrella, but let's narrow our focus a bit to its incredibly important, maybe more specific cousin, human-computer interaction, HCI.
HCI, yes.
What, in your view, is the biggest misconception people have about human-computer interaction?
Oh, that's a great question. Because I think many people assume HCI is just about making things look pretty.
Right, the aesthetics.
Or maybe just user-friendliness in a very superficial way. But what's truly fascinating is how different sources define HCI, yet they all sort of converge on a deeper truth.
Which is?
It's about making technology work with us, not just for us. Johnson, back in '92, called it simply the study of the interaction between people, computers, and tasks. Pretty straightforward.
People, computers, tasks. Got it.
Then Hicks and Hertzen in '93, they emphasized what happens when human users and computer systems perform tasks together, aiming for, quote, high usability.
Usability, that's a core concept.
Definitely. Priest and colleagues in '94 broadened it to designing computer systems to support people to carry out activities productively and safely.
Productively and safely. Important combo.
Very. But for me, Hill's note from '95 is really key. He stressed it's always about particular people use particular computer systems to perform particular tasks in a particular context.
Ah, so specificity matters. Context is everything.
Exactly. It highlights that design isn't, one size fits all. And if we broaden the scope even more, Stuart Card from Xerox PRS, a real pioneer, he really laid out the vastness of HCI's concerns.
Okay, what did he include?
Well, it's not just the screen. It's about the joint performance of tasks by humans and machines. It considers human capabilities, what we can do, how we learn, and crucially, the learnability of the machines themselves.
How easy is it to pick up?
Precisely. HCI delves into the very algorithms and programming that make an interface work, the practical engineering challenges of building them, and the inevitable trade-offs designers face.
Always trade-offs.
Always. It covers the entire process, from the initial idea right through to implementation, the structure of how humans and machines communicate, and even the broader social and organizational impacts of machine design. It's truly holistic.
That is a lot of layers. But if you think about it, we encounter this stuff constantly, don't we?
Every day.
Like take a simple stovetop.
Mhm.
Why do some have the knobs arranged, just like the burners, totally intuitive, while others are just in a straight line, and you're left to guessing which knob controls which burner?
The classic bad design example.
Right. Or think about any computer interface.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the save button? How clear are the error messages? Those design choices, they're all part of HCI, and they dramatically affect our experience.
Massively.
Good design makes it intuitive, safe, productive. You just get it. Bad design, Well, that leads to frustration, errors, maybe even danger sometimes. That's the core of what we're talking about here, really. From the simplest gadget to complex software. So how do designers actually do this? It sounds like they consistently focus on, what, four core pillars, like a secret recipe for great interaction.
You could call it that. These four factors are absolutely fundamental. They're the bedrock for any successful interaction design.
Okay, what are they?
First, we have users. And this isn't just about demographics like age or gender.
Right.
It's about truly understanding the people using the system, their goals, their limitations, their mental models, how they think about the task. If you don't get your users, you're basically designing blind.
Makes sense. What's second?
Second, tasks. It's critical to understand precisely what needs to get done. What are people trying to accomplish? What steps are involved? This defines the purpose of the interaction.
Okay, users and tasks. Third.
Third is context. This is all about knowing when, where, and how the user is working. Are they in a noisy factory, a quiet office, on a bumpy train?
A good point.
Is it urgent? What distractions might be around? The same interface might work perfectly in one context and, well, fail miserably in another.
That seems crucial. And the last one.
And finally, technologies. This means choosing the right tools for the job, the right hardware, software, underlying systems to support the users, tasks, and context effectively. It's about using technology strategically, not just, for its own sake.
Got it. Users, tasks, context, technologies.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, ignoring any one of these factors, it's like building a house without a proper foundation. It might stand for a bit, but it won't be stable or effective long term.
It makes complete sense. I often wonder if that context factor is the one that gets overlooked the most sometimes.
It absolutely can be.
Especially like when designers are in their quiet offices,
Yeah.
not out where the thing is actually being used.
That's exactly where many well-intentioned designs can fall short. You need to understand the real-world environment.
Right. Speaking of foundational ideas, here's where it gets really interesting.
Right.
Imagine someone way back in 1945, long before the internet, before personal computers were even a thing, describing something that sounds, well, uncannily like our modern digital world.
You must be talking about Vannevar Bush.
Exactly, Vannevar Bush. In 1945, he published this groundbreaking article describing an information system he called the Memex.
The Memex, yes. He envisioned it as a personal machine, capable of storing just vast amounts of information, books, records, communications, all on microfilm, which was the tech of the day.
Microfilm. What?
The truly revolutionary part was how users would interact with it. They could create what he called information trails.
Trail.
Essentially links. Links between related texts, illustrations, even notes they made themselves. These trails could then be stored, shared maybe, and retrieved later.
So like hypertext.
Exactly like hypertext. Bush firmly believed this associative method, linking ideas as you find them, was much closer to how the human mind actually works.
Compared to, say, filing cabinet.
Right, compared to linear filing systems or library indexes. He thought our minds jump associatively.
And here's the aha moment for you listening.
Yeah.
This system, conceived so long ago, is strikingly similar to modern hypertext, the very foundation of the World Wide Web.
It's incredible.
It directly inspired many of the later scientists and engineers who actually went on to build the internet as we know it.
No question about it.
Bush, who passed away in 1974, is now rightly seen as this profound visionary. He basically laid the conceptual groundwork for how we navigate information decades before the popular internet and the web even existed.
It's like he saw the future.
He really did.
And his broader vision for this personal information system, it was incredibly comprehensive. He imagined everyone would have one.
A Memex for all.
Right, and that it would record everything one sees or hears and support easy transfer of records to other people.
Wow.
And what's even more remarkable, he thought it should be small enough not to intrude on daily life. A personal device, always with you, always ready to capture and connect.
That sounds, well, it almost sounds like a prediction of something like the Apple Knowledge Navigator video, doesn't it?
It really does.
That famous 1987 concept video showing that personal, all-knowing digital assistant you just talked to.
Yeah, the agent that anticipates your needs. It shows we're still chasing that ideal, that dream of truly seamless, intuitive information access that Bush hinted at so long ago.
A dream we're still working towards. Okay, now let's take a chronological deep dive into how human-computer interaction has actually evolved.
This historical path.
Yeah, it's a fascinating journey, and it's not just about new tech. but about the changing metaphors, how we think we communicate with computers.
The underlying concepts, yeah. So to set the scene for the 1930s and 40s, we were, of course, in the thick of world wars.
Right, huge pressure on production.
Exactly. Incredibly high demands for efficient production. And this era saw the rise of time and motion studies. Think Taylor for optimizing time, Gilbert's for motion.
Frederick Taylor Frank and Lillian Gilbreth.
Correct. These studies focused heavily on physical ergonomics and efficiencies for mass production in factories. They laid some early groundwork for understanding human-system interaction, even if the systems back then were mostly mechanical.
And the actual computer interaction.
The earliest forms were incredibly basic. Punch tape readers, essentially. Programs and data were literally encoded as holes in paper tape. Very physical, slow, meticulous work.
Wow. Okay, moving into the 50s.
So the 1950s, we start to see the very first papers on human factors specifically related to computer use emerging.
The field begins.
Yeah, there was growing interest, especially from the Air Force and the new space programs. They obviously needed incredibly precise and efficient human-machine interfaces for really complex machinery.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. And this decade really solidified what became known as the typewriter metaphor.
The typewriter metaphor.
Yeah, the widespread use of teletype machines, those clunky devices printing out messages, was hugely influential. It established the core idea that we communicate with a computer via a dialogue on a typewriter. Type a command, hit enter, the computer types back a response on paper.
That's such a fundamental shift in thinking, isn't it? From punching physical holes to actually having a typed conversation, even if it's slow and on paper.
It was a huge leap.
What was the biggest psychological hurdle for users then, moving from just text input towards graphics? And how long did that typewriter idea stick around?
Well, it stuck around for quite a while, actually. The 1960s brought big hardware changes. CRT computer terminals, the first screens, looking like old TVs, started replacing teletypes.
Okay, screens arrive.
These were connected to central mainframe computers, often using time sharing. So many users shared one big machine. Interaction was mainly via a command line interface, or CLI.
Still typing commands.
Exactly. Despite the new screens, it was still very much based on that original typewriter metaphor. Type command, get text response on screen. But a pivotal shift occurred with Sketchpad in 1963
Sketchpad.
by Ivan Sutherland. Arguably the first real attempt to build a graphical user interface, a GUI. And it was directly influenced by Bush's Memex concept.
Connecting back.
Yeah, the new metaphor here became, we communicate with a computer by drawing pictures, using a light pen for input directly on the screen.
Drawing. That's radical for the time.
Absolutely radical, truly visualizing interaction. And this period also saw other foundational work, like Doug Engelbart's incredible 1968 demo.
The mother of all demos.
That's the one, showcasing a personal computer with a mouse pointer, windows, hypertext, and J.C.R. Licklider's visionary work throughout the 60s on interactive computing. Lots happening conceptually.
So the seeds of the GUI were sown, but the typewriter metaphor still dominated daily use.
Pretty much. The 1970s saw continued growth, more papers, more conferences on HCI. Time-sharing on mainframes was still the norm, and CLIs largely dominated the interaction landscape. Graphical interfaces were mostly experimental or just too expensive for widespread use. The typewriter dialogue held strong.
Until the 80s.
The 80s. That brought a true revolution. The widespread arrival of personal computers.
Finally.
And this ushered in the prominence of the graphical user interface, the GUI metaphor, for the masses. Key examples you'll know. The 1981 Xerox Alto and Star.
Legendary.
Pioneering that desktop metaphor with windows, icons, menus, and then the ones that really broke through commercially. The 1984 Apple Lisa and especially the Macintosh.
The Mac changes everything.
It really did. These machines brought the idea of direct manipulation, dragging, dropping, pointing, clicking to the public. It truly shifted how people thought about computers. You weren't just typing commands anymore. You were directly interacting with visual things on screen.
Okay, so the GUI takes over in the 80s. What about the 90s?
By the 90s, personal computers became common household items. GUI spread rapidly, especially with Windows machines making PCs much more accessible.
Windows 3.1, Windows 95.
Exactly. This decade also saw the rise of multimedia CD-ROMs and, of course, the explosion of the World Wide Web.
The web changes everything again.
Absolutely. And the promise of virtual reality also started emerging more seriously, hinting at even more immersive interaction down the line.
And then the late 90s, early 2000s, what's the next big shift?
As we moved from the late 90s into the 2000s, we saw personal digital assistance PDAs like the Palm Pilot gain popularity, computing in your pocket.
I remember those.
Alongside that, the massive e-commerce boom and the continued explosion of the web, mobile phones were rapidly taking off, starting to hint at this connected, always-on world. And interactive digital TV began to emerge, though maybe didn't quite take off as expected then.
Right. Then the 2000s give way to the 2010s.
From 2001 to 2010, the landscape changed dramatically again. The big story: ubiquitous smartphones with touchscreens. The iPhone in 2007 was a major catalyst.
The touchscreen era begins.
Definitely. We also saw significant convergences, the internet and TV merging more successfully, the explosive rise of social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, and the increasing popularity of tablets, like the iPad in 2010. The desktop was no longer the only or even primary interface for many.
Things get much more mobile and connected. What about the last decade, 2011 to 2020?
The decade from 2011 to 2020 was characterized by even more diverse and maybe more natural interactions. Podcasting became huge, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. Private video channels like YouTube stars, voice-controlled home assistants Alexa, Google Home arrived in millions of homes.
Talking to our tech.
Exactly. We also saw low-cost augmented reality and virtual reality gear becoming more accessible. Wearables like smartwatches took off, and even early discussions about implants started getting more serious. The interface became less about just a screen and more about our surroundings, our voice, our bodies.
Okay, which brings us pretty much up to
Oh.
date, 2020 to now.
And as we hit 2020 and moved into the current period, we've seen technologies like large language models and generative AI. I think ChatGPT really emerge and capture public attention.
That feels like a huge shift again.
It is. These are fundamentally changing how we interact with information and systems, moving from needing precise commands to using more conversational, sometimes even ambiguous prompts. But if you had to pick the dominant metaphor today, right now, it's largely still the touchscreen on a personal device.
Still poking and swiping.
Yeah. We communicate with a computer mostly by poking, pinching, and swiping on a touchscreen. That's the main way for billions of people.
It's truly incredible, though, to reflect on just how rapidly this evolution has happened.
Isn't it?
From punching holes in paper to typing commands, drawing with a light pen, clicking a mouse, and now just swiping a screen or talking to an AI. It really hits me how much we've adapted as humans to our tools.
Just as much as the tools adapted to us.
Exactly. It's like this symbiotic dance that just keeps accelerating.
Wow.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We certainly have.
Our journey took us from the fundamental human factors that influence technology use to the specific field of HCI and its core principles, users, tasks, context, technology.
4 pillars.
Right. And critically, we've seen how HCI and usability are constantly striving to make this whole process better, more intuitive, more productive. The key takeaway, for me at least, is this relentless, fascinating evolution of how we communicate with and control our digital world. So what does this all mean for us?
Well, this raises, I think, an important question for you, the listener, to really ponder, building on everything we've discussed.
Okay.
If the journey of HCI has been one of these ever-evolving metaphors, typewriter, desktop, touchscreen, this, okay, what's the key metaphor for tomorrow's interaction? How will we really communicate with a computer next? Will it be mainly by speaking, by thinking maybe, by gesturing in thin air, or perhaps something entirely new that we can't even properly imagine yet? Considering the patterns, the breakthroughs we've talked about today, what do you think the next big shift in human-computer interaction will actually be?